Everyone, so today we are outside of the Grow Paradise Garden. I've ventured 3 hours south down to Cornwall to visit Trebah Garden and it has not disappointed. I've already had a quick walk around with my wife and it's absolutely stunning. So the gardens are open for another hour today, so I'm just going to give you a quick look around and I'll share some of the highlights for me in this beautiful coastal garden that's got some really fantastic subtropical planting. Trebah has a rich history stretching all the way back to 1838, where the garden was started in a wooded valley by Charles and Sarah Fox. Since then, it has passed through numerous families and has a lot of horticultural history. Today, the garden stretches over 26 acres and it has 4 miles of footpath that winds through this gently sloping valley. Now, the coastal microclimate in this warm and sheltered valley means that so many subtropical plants thrive year-round. So let's see what plants we can find as we gently walk through the garden and make our way down to its own private beach. These hydrangeas are something a bit different. Hydrangea aspera, I believe they are. They have these really nice, thick, furry leaves. They grow into really large shrubs. And I think they really fit into this subtropical planting with this kind of palm tree backdrop, all of the tree ferns. There are hundreds of tree ferns planted throughout this valley. These large leaves and these really long-lasting flowers, I think look really, really good. If I had the space, maybe in the future I will, I'll definitely be trying more of these. Now we're walking towards the koi pond, and when I was looking in here earlier it was really busy, so I'm hoping now the gardens are nearly closed, I'm going to have a nice private look at this very, very jungly looking pond. I would absolutely love a pond like this in our garden, but something this size would take over the whole space. So maybe I need to shrink it and take inspiration. You have got a selection of tree ferns here. These are likely Dicksonia antarctica. These will be very, very old and very mature. There's double-headed specimens planted all around the garden. And then this really naturalistic planting around these huge boulders. Now inside the pond, I'm not sure if you'll see, right there in the middle is an absolutely enormous fish. I think it's a sturgeon. Here he is. That's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 foot long. Almost shark-like proportions. And there are koi in here as well. This is another feature I would love to build in my garden. If you've subscribed, you'd know. In the Grow Paradise Garden, we started with a really small pond, but this is the dream. This lush jungle pond is going to be particularly effective because it's going to look this green year-round. The mix of mature Trachycarpus palm trees and Dicksonia antarctica tree ferns, which will likely remain evergreen in this subtropical microclimate, will keep it looking lush and jungly throughout the year. I could sit here for hours on a warm day. It's lovely and cool with the sound of water, and it would just soothe my mind no matter what was going on in the world. Stunning. I think this is a puya, not a fascicularia. I could be wrong though. It's definitely a bromeliad, a terrestrial bromeliad, and they use it to great effect in Trebah as an edging plant along all of the paths. It's evergreen, so it's going to look fantastic year round, and it definitely creates a tropical look. They've got this glossy sheen, and even in the partial shade now as the sun's starting to set on this September day, it looks really, really nice. This is something I really love about how this garden's been designed. At Trebah, they've really thought about beautiful seating areas. So as you come off the paths throughout the garden, there's secluded zones where you can find a nice seat and be surrounded by these beautiful plants. And you are really, really surrounded because you're in a valley. The slopes are really steep on either side. So the trees, and there are champion trees here, they feel absolutely enormous. It's really, really humbling. Now, here we've got more of that really nice hydrangea aspera. You can see the size they grow to. And in partial shade here, to give you an idea, that's the size these leaves get to. And then more Dicksonia. They are planted en masse. I think they're probably self-sporing through the garden. They're very slow growing, but this garden's got a few hundred years of history behind it. So they've had some time to establish. And then we've got hedychiums that are just going over now, flowering gingers that would fill this area with scent. And a really beautiful view down the valley towards the bay. I know I'm supposed to be working, but it's too good not to, at least for a moment or two. There are some enormous examples of the Canary Island date palm. That's Phoenix canariensis. They are thriving here. Now, just a county or two up the road to where the Grow Paradise Garden is, we really struggle. When you plant them small, the temperatures drop too low and they tend to get spearpool and they don't survive winters. But they're clearly thriving here, and I've seen some in the garden, I'll try and find them again, that have developed huge trunks and they are starting to look like mature specimens. Maybe flip-flops wasn't the right idea, knowing that it was a steep-sided valley, but I'm well practiced now. I'll struggle on. This is what I mean about the sheer quantity of tree ferns. Now, I've not visited masses of Cornish gardens yet. I'd like to visit a lot more. And I'm thinking that they must do so well here, and where the subtropical planting style has had such a long history in Cornwall, they must have thrived over hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's just so many double-headed tree ferns that if you were to buy now would set you back probably close to £1,000. There's a plant that many of us are familiar with. That's Persicaria red dragon, and it's a really nice, easy, completely cold hardy plant that will come back after a tough winter. It dives back to the ground and regrows very, very quickly. And that purple leaf adds a really nice colour contrast against the green foliage. It's breaking up the green of the tree ferns there, the canopy behind them, and all of the foliage to the other side of the path. Definitely one to try if you're starting out in tropical style gardens. It's super easy and it's not expensive to buy. Now, visiting Cornish gardens is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. It's about a 3-hour drive for me, so it's not too bad. But to be honest, I got quite comfortable just filming in my garden. It's always a bit nerve-wracking talking to the camera out and about when there's other people. And I'm conscious not to get other visitors on camera as well, because not everybody wants to be on camera. But when I'm out and I get in the flow, it's enjoyable. So let me know if there's other gardens that you would love for me to pop out and visit and film, whether that's in the south of the country or further up north. I've got to get out of my comfort zone. I would love to share more tours. Leave a comment and let me know where you would like to see a tour, and I'll do my best to get there. One thing about leaving it a bit later in the day to come around and film the gardens is you have the benefit it's so quiet and you get that low autumnal sun just shining through. There is a really beautiful large tetrapanax there. And it's got a nice cut leaf with that three-dimensional look. It's not sitting flat, so that's not the standard tetrapanax papyrifera. That will be a cultivar, I think, probably Rex. And then more really nice flowering gingers. Now, this is an almost white flowering one. And I always get the species mixed up, but they're all beautiful. They all look very tropical. And they'll take light frosts below zero, just give them a good mulch, cut them back in winter, cover the rhizomes, and you will get this display most years. They do need a bit of warmth to get going, definitely to help them flower. Just spotted a huge Schefflera delavei, or maybe macrophylla, behind those tetrapanax. I can never remember which is which, but the coppery underside, the indamenton on the leaves, is looking great with that autumnal sun shining on them. The sense of scale that you get in a garden like this is just unmatched by most domestic gardens. Now, yeah, this did start off as a domestic garden for the house that stands further up on the hillside, but these days this is rare, and it's really nice. They've cut out certain points throughout the valley, so as you're walking on the higher pass, which we're on now, you can see down and you can see all of the layers down to the stream, the ponds, the Gunnera passage. It's really, really effective. This is what makes me suspect that over the many hundreds of years history this garden's got, the mass planting of tree ferns has probably resulted in them naturalising, self-sporing and growing up, because throughout the valley there are tree ferns in peculiar places that are growing out of the walls, growing out of crevices where the spores have landed and they've grown. Gardeners over the garden's history have spotted them, noticed it's something a bit different and left it to grow. And now they're thriving. They are just everywhere. tiny little Dicksonia tree ferns popping up out of every crevice. It's amazing, but something that needs the right environment, the right eye from gardeners to know that it's not a weed, or it is, but if you want it in this place, it changes from a weed to something you want to keep. It's the definition of a weed, right? Just a plant that you don't want to grow where it's growing. But if you decide that I didn't plant these here, but I'm happy with them growing, then it becomes a plant that you want to keep. You nurse it, you look after it, and these are going to grow into homegrown Dicksonia, presuming that's how they ended up here. Look at the size of this bamboo. It's got a beautiful culm, really, really thick culms. Let's find the thickest. That one or that one? It's a Phylostachys edulis, and this is absolutely gigantic. This is something that I think we can take note from. Ornamental features in gardens don't have to be flowers and leaves every single time. They can be bark, and this is Luma apiculata. I think sometimes it's commonly known as temu, and it has this coppery bark, and you can see how the light is just hitting it and it's making it a really ornamental plant. Now you can grow this plant in many ways. It's really versatile. So you can grow it as a low growing hedge, you can grow it as a tree. This looks as though it's been coppiced to send up kind of multiple stems, so you get to enjoy this bark, and as it matures they actually produce like a camo effect as the bark peels. It's definitely something to add if you're looking for a fast growing evergreen that does flower. You get little white flowers, but it has ornamental bark, so you're going to get that interest even on the trunk as the canopy gets up and over head height. Definitely one to try. Just casually walking through a valley garden and you stumble upon an amphitheatre. Imagine coming here to watch a play, again surrounded by all of this planting. Absolutely stunning. Let's keep going down the valley because there's quite a few things that are looking good. The sun's setting and the clock is ticking. I'm going to get kicked out soon. Wow, this is probably the biggest Willemii pine I've ever seen growing. It's incredible. These pines have such a special history. They were thought to be extinct. A botanist discovered these trees in one patch of an isolated valley, and he took one of the leaves back to be investigated, and they thought it was a fern. They didn't believe it came from a tree. So he took them out, and it was the trees that they thought had been extinct for hundreds of years. So now they are being cultivated. They're very, very slow growing. They're still rare. I noticed there's a young one here and another there. So perhaps they're hoping to get some cones to form, then some seeds, and they can add to the collection of these plants that are being recultivated to protect this species. These Gunnera are enormous, and there are hundreds of them planted in the moist soil along the stream here that's heading down to the sea. And I know we're getting close to the private beach because I can hear the waves rolling in. Now, these Gunnera have been featured in the news a lot recently because there are two types. There's manicata and tinctoria, one of which is thought to be invasive. Using genetic testing, plant health experts have decided that the majority of Gunnera growing in the UK are probably a hybrid, Gunnera cryptica. So I suspect these are them, but I could be wrong. Now we are in late summer, so the leaves have grown enormous. We've had a good wet year, good depending which way you look at it. So these plants have had all the moisture they need, but because it's September, it's getting late in the year, a lot of the leaves have collapsed because they've just grown so large that they're too big to support themselves on these thick, spiky, fleshy stems. Another one that if I had the space, I'd probably have a go at, but my neighbours would think I was ridiculous if I did this in my garden. I think it's probably one of the reasons that I love tropical style gardens so much is because having big leaves, enormous leaves like this, just can make you feel engulfed by a garden rather than having loads of small bedding plants. Things like this, which I know are ridiculous, they are massive, but they can create a sense of seclusion, maybe a sense of peace, safety, I don't know. Big leaves, and I'm absolutely surrounded in all directions by Gunnera here. Big leaves are humbling, and I think when you've got the space to play with, if you can grow things en masse that create that effect, then go for it. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot cooler under this canopy of Gunnera leaves than it is out in the sun. It's lovely. Schefflera growing here, just starting to flower now. So all of the leaves around the centre there, the centre is the flower. The leaves turn bright red and it makes it a really attractive plant. And it looks as though it's naturalised here, growing in the wall. You can see it's basking in the sun. Looks amazing. Flashes of red as you're walking along there. So that becomes the star of the show now. And then I imagine the azaleas behind it look incredible in spring and early summer. Even the hydrangeas here are absolutely massive. Seeing all of the blue hydrangeas with the afternoon sun gleaming on them, you can see why they chose that shade of blue for the bridge. Now there's a sign in the garden that says a lot of visitors see this bridge and think it looks like the bridge in Monet's painting, and I can see why. It's incredible. And just beyond the bridge, you've got this island of Gunnera. And then beyond that, I can do more than just hear the sea now. Now I can see it. So we're heading right to the end of the garden, down to the beach. It is so close to the sea, which explains why the microclimate is so warm. That, and we're in the south of the UK. This planting is so close to the sea, it's literally just there, just the other side of the wall. So it's going to get covered in salt-laden winds, and you can see the plants that are thriving in this gravel bed. We've got sedums, aeoniums, and I suspect these all stay out because this proximity to the sea is going to keep this bed really nice and warm. Huge agaves. There's echiums at the back there. I think that's fastuosum or candicans. Gorgeous. This is a genuinely stunning spot. So if you're ever in Cornwall, this is near Falmouth, come and visit Trebah Garden. The fact that you've got these ponds, the beach, it goes all the way up to the house that I can see at the top there that's looking down through the valley. It's incredible, and they're making use of the microclimate. They're playing with the plants, pushing to see what boundaries you can get away with in terms of hardiness, and at this end of the garden, in terms of salt tolerance and wind tolerance, which is something that a lot of people have to contend with. So to see how they're doing it here could potentially give you inspiration for your garden. Hopefully you've enjoyed this tour. If you have, hit subscribe. It's the easiest way to support the channel. And like I said, leave a comment below letting me know what gardens you'd like us to visit next, because I might find my flow and I might be able to do a few more of these, as well as the regular content from the Grow Paradise Garden. Thank you again. I'll see you all in the next one.